And hello, everyone, and welcome here to the SportsBuzz podcast here on Arizona Sports Box. I'm Bouchy, once again being joined here by Wills Rice here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And obviously, it's been a great week for Arizona sports, and this time I'm going to turn around to Wills here as the host. And Wills, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Caleb. Like you mentioned, it's been not necessarily a good week for Arizona sports. ASU coming off that 18-34 loss at Utah, a great Utah team though, and then the Cardinals coming off that 13-25 loss at the Steelers, which was really a very close game all the way to the end for both games. And both games are actually, like I said, very close, but both teams did not seem to play their best when it counted. I mean, ASU matched up with Utah all the way probably about midway through the fourth quarter with kickoff returns and great punt returns, but the offense couldn't do much for ASU in that tough Utah crowd and the tough defense. So what do you think ASU needs to do to be more consistent? Like, we saw them beat UCLA at UCLA, beat Colorado, but then kind of fall short against Utah.
You know, I really thought ASU, it was really the big game for them, controlling the Pac-12 South. I mean, Utah's now 2 wins ahead of them, but hey, they even though they lost to a good team. Utah is undefeated. They're 6-0. So obviously it's not an easy team to beat. It's not like the same Utah Utes that we've seen against ASU in the past few years. Utah hasn't beat ASU, I think it's been since the 70s.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time, and it's very impressive for the Utes. And hopefully maybe, I'm not sure at this point that they'll get the 4th spot in the college football playoff. They're looking good at it right now. But one of the most questionable things I ever thought out of that game was Mike Norvell's play calling. What were your thoughts about that? I
agree. I thought it was a little shaky. I mean, Utah, you're going to have to run the ball. No matter who you're playing, you have to run the ball. And it really hurt the Sun Devils that DeMario Richard was injured. But I thought Mike Norvell, one of the staples of ASU last year, was that deep ball that really opened the field. And I think ASU this year, with the loss of Cameron Smith, it really hurt the offense. But they've been taking the 5-yard passes every time, and I think that's helped the opposing defenses. They can just kind of come up short, and they don't really have to look for the long ball as much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, ASU, they have a great team. They have a great defense. They have a really impressive offense. We're just not seeing that performance that we thought that Kirk Herbstreit was going to predict at the beginning of the season. I mean, think about it. We got good players like Mike Bercovici, DJ Foster. These guys are all seniors. We're not going to see them back next year, and just they're not performing to the expectations that everyone's thought so. And it's really been disappointing, very questionable to see what ASU's fate will be in the next few years.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed, especially watching that Utah game, I think Mike Bercovici, when he came in last year for the injured Taylor Kelly, he had nothing to lose. He was slinging every pass, fitting everything in there. Against USC, he had like 500 passing yards, something incredible. I think this year, now that it's his team, he's kind of timid. He's like, I just want to make the smart plays. I don't want to make the home run. I want to hit singles. I don't want to hit home runs. And I think that's really hurt him in his decision-making because he's been so safe that I just remember one play in particular. It was late in the fourth quarter, and we were down 6 points, I believe. And there was a 3rd and 10. They had to pick up the first down to keep the drive going. And Bercovici threw a 4-yard pass, and we ended up having to punt. And I think that's where you, as a senior quarterback, have to realize that you need the first down there, and you might have to force something.
It was definitely a tough game for ASU. I mean, Utah, like I said, they lost to a good team. Bercovici, I just obviously, like, I honestly think he's a better quarterback than Taylor Kelly. I've said this a lot. But obviously, when you're putting on a lot of pressure when you're the leader of this team, and especially when you only have 1 year to do it, it's just very hard. You can't have this experience back next year because you either play in the NFL or you can't play anywhere else except for the Arena Football League. But other than that, I mean, it's just Bercovici is just definitely having some off games. Obviously, those off games are going to hurt the team that it's eventually not going to heal at this point. But I just definitely think it's just pretty much knocked their chances out of getting at least in the top 10 in the college football standings, which is obviously going to hurt a lot. But good for Utah. I mean, obviously Utah has been losing to ASU for the past few years, and the fact that they finally able to go on this undefeated record It's very healthy for the Pac-12. I really wish Utah the best and hopefully gets to the college football playoff.
Yeah, and I think Utah, one of the things that's helped them so much is that they really came under the radar. This year coming in, USC, UCLA, and ASU were so hyped up. So I'm predicting ASU to be in the playoff. USC and UCLA with some of the top recruiting classes in the nation, and look who it is. It's Utah at the top, actually, if the season ended today, in the college football playoff. And it's a really great thing to see, actually, as just a bystander for a football fan.
Yeah, definitely. Utah is the team we never thought was even going to come close to getting to the college football playoff. No one, I've never seen the predictions, but no one ever thought Utah was ever going to be the number one team in the Pac-12. Especially, I think. I mean, no one in the North has even delivered. So I think Utah's that number one team.
Yeah, I was looking at, I believe, 2 days ago, the ESPN, the Sports Illustrated, and then one other site. It might have been the Bleacher Report. In all three of those standings, ASU, USC, and UCLA were all swapped around first, second, third in the South.
Yeah.
Utah was predicted either fourth or fifth in every single one of those standings, let alone being a top 4 team in the nation.
Oh, wow. That's very huge statistic for Utah. And, yeah, once again, I mean, good for them. I mean, they have after moving up to the Pac-12, it has been the best couple of years. They're finally adapting to that big league conference that they needed to get to. It's obviously, it really shows that patience is really worth it for this team getting to this point. Hopefully they can stay there. One thing's for sure, other than Arizona State, we saw U of A blow out Colorado, and obviously a very impressive win. But do you think U of A competes anyhow in the Pac-12 South?
No, with 2 losses, they're in the same boat as ASU. I mean, Utah controls their own destiny. Utah's going to control the tiebreaker over everyone else, so it's going to be tough if you're any of those teams.
Yeah, and other than the Pac-12 South, looking at the Pac-12 North, obviously it's a toss-up at this point right now, but who do you think is, at this point, I think it's pretty obvious, who do you think will be the set matchup for the Pac-12 championship this year?
I think you have to look at Stanford. Stanford, ever since that first game of the season against Northwestern, that crushing blow, and Northwestern actually proving to be not a bad team in the college football world today, but Stanford's been killing everyone. They killed UCLA, killed U of A, and they've just looked like a great football team. Mm-hmm. And usually a staple for Stanford has been that defense, and the defense has been great. But I really think that offense has taken a huge step for Stanford. And I think the winner of that Stanford-Utah game is either going to have a chance to obviously make the Rose Bowl, because that's what Pac-12 does, or a spot in that college football playoff.
That's actually going to be big because, obviously, because of college football playoff rules, they hosted the semifinal matchup, but now we understand that the Rose Bowl will go back to its classic matchup, Pac-12 champion versus Big Ten champion. So that'll be very exciting to watch. I really thought Cal was going to take over the Pac-12 North. They do have a 5-1 overall record, but when you look at their conference record against Stanford, Stanford's undefeated and California's 2-1. So obviously, when it comes to getting to the Rose Bowl, your conference record is really what's going to matter the most.
Yeah, and I think something for ASU is, like, if you look at their losses, there's nothing to be disappointed about. The loss to USC was a little bit upsetting.
Very upsetting,
if you look where USC is now. But there are 3 losses on the season: Texas A&M, USC, and Utah. And I think this bye week is coming at a great time with an Oregon team who's in the same boat as ASU, where a lot of preseason hype, but not in the place they really want to be. I'm wondering, I want to get your opinion on this too. What do you think ASU is going to come out? Do you think ASU is going to still have that fire? I think the bye week's going to help, but I'm very interested to see if ASU comes out and really brings it, or looks like a team that their season's over.
Well, as a fan, I mean, it looks like all the momentum's really killed after that ASU-Utah game. It's definitely been depressing. But, like I said, it doesn't seem like it's worth fighting for right now. But hopefully, I mean, you can't really do much about the past. You can only focus on the present now. And as a fan, as long as they get a win over U of A, I can call it a good season. But hopefully, I mean, ASU is definitely at this point, I would safely say they're bowl eligible to be in one of those bowl games next year. Actually, this year.
I mean, you have to win 6 games, but with the schedule, that's probable.
Very plausible, I would say. But no, that they have some big games coming up. They got Oregon when they return after the bye week at home, and obviously we saw the Adidas, the Pat Tillman, Adidas. We're gonna see more of those military uniforms to honor the late Pat Tillman, the ultimate Sun Devil, I like to call him. They got Washington State, Washington at home. They're hosting U of A and Cal the last 2 weeks. So obviously, I mean, it doesn't really seem like there's anything worth fighting for right now. But obviously, there's just a lot of time to get that off your head when you're in the bye week. So obviously, it's just hard for this Sun Devil team. But hopefully, I mean, you always gotta finish strong no matter where you're at in the standings, wherever you're at. But hopefully, things will start to turn up. So that's what I hope.
And on the similar note here, the Cardinals, coming off that loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, very depressing. Pittsburgh Steelers having the backup quarterback in the game. And
actually, I believe that was the third-string quarterback.
Well, yeah, so Michael Vick started the game, and then Landry Jones comes in and fills in the game. And actually, the Cardinals' best player, probably, Calais Campbell, said after the game, "I did not know who that guy was until he came in the game." He had no clue who the guy that was torching the Cardinals' defense was until he came in the game. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, that is incredible. We definitely saw some unknown stars. Landry Jones for Pittsburgh. I definitely think if that was Pittsburgh, I'd definitely keep him as a top quarterback. Or he's definitely a talented quarterback after seeing what he can do on the field. And really disappointing for this Cardinals team. Kind of the same problems they've had with ASU with their offense. Defense is doing they do pretty good getting the job done. It's really the offense, though, that controls the most when it comes to scoring points. So really, really tough, shocking loss. I really thought this was going to be an easy win for the Cardinals, but guess I was wrong, and now both teams are 4-2. And not only that, pretty much a few minutes left in the game, we knew the Cardinals were going to lose this game after pretty much like showing no effort in this game, even though they still had somewhat of a chance. They just didn't take it. So obviously very very disappointing going in. And now that the next game is going to be big because everyone's going to be focusing on it since it's going to be a Monday night game at home against Baltimore. And that's going to be a very big game. And it's really probably going to be the biggest game of the season yet so far for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think it's a great way for the Cardinals to turn their season around. That Seattle game's in progress right now. I think Seattle's going to pull the win out comfortably. But the Cardinals still have that two-game cushion, two-game cushion over the Seahawks. And I think as long as you can keep that, the better. And although you don't want to worry about how your opponent's doing, the Seahawks are always going to be there, no matter what the record is. I believe this is the same record they started off last year, and they were one play away from winning the Super Bowl. So you never know when it's the Seahawks, and whenever you have that lead over them, it's a great thing to have. And I think the Cardinals, against a struggling Baltimore team, are going to get back on the right track this week.
Yeah, Seattle, everyone always makes a joke out of it, what happened last year, because they're like one of the most hated teams now. They decided not to run the ball, but they passed it, and the interception happened by New England in the Super Bowl last year. But obviously, I mean, Seattle's a good team. Definitely give them that. And hopefully, I really think the Cardinals can end up pulling it out and really taking over the division over Seattle, which no one has been able to dethrone Seattle in the past few years since Seattle has gotten back-to-back Super Bowl appearances, especially going into the playoffs with the highest seed in the division. So obviously, it'll be a tight race, kind of like just like last year. But everyone thought Seattle was going to pull it through, and they did. But I actually think Arizona, even after the shocking loss against Pittsburgh, that they'll really turn their heads around, just get back in the game like they usually do. So hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, and the Cardinals, although they did lose to Pittsburgh, it's unlike ASU. ASU could not pass the ball, couldn't get yards against Utah for their lives. Carson Palmer looked great the entire game. It's just his decision-making in the end zone. I think one of the big things, John Brown had a great game against the Steelers. I think in that red zone, Carson Palmer really wanted to, cap it off with a touchdown pass to John Brown. And he kind of forced the ball in there, and that's what ended the interception in the red zone. Really killed us, almost reminiscent of the Super Bowl when we played the Steelers. But it's something the Cardinals will work on, and they really do look good, and I think it's nothing to worry about if you're a Cardinals fan.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they obviously this game coming up is going to be big against Baltimore, but I think they got this. They know what's at stake, so hopefully they can eventually pull it out. And it is a home game, so they know they're going to have that. A lot of Cardinal fans getting loud when Baltimore's on offense, so it'll definitely be big. I obviously can't wait. I'm going to be watching that game. It will be very exciting to see the Cardinals play on some good old classic Monday Night Football. It'll be very exciting, so definitely. So, yeah.
All right, wrapping all that up, we're going to take a break here. You're listening to the SportsBuzz podcast on the Arizona Sports Box. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to the SportsBuzz podcast on Arizona Sports Box. I'm Wills, joined by Caleb, and we're going to jump into some NBA basketball with that season tipping off right around the corner. The Suns actually just finished up preseason basketball on Wednesday night, and it's going to be an interesting season for the Suns. It will. The season does start with a home game against Dallas, I think we said, right?
Yes.
On Wednesday.
Wednesday, October 28th, to be exact.
It's going to be a fun season. They got the new guy, I forgot how to pronounce his name, from Memphis, Lure, I think his name, and excited some fans with the dunk he had in the preseason over DeMarcus Cousins.
Oh, yeah, I think that was the first preseason game against Sacramento. That was like a viral dunk. I've never seen something like that before.
And Bledsoe's coming back in full strength. Brandon Knight, who got injured at the end of last season, will be back. And even with all the controversy, Markieff Morris will be back in a Suns uniform and actually did very well in the last preseason game for the Suns. And I think the Suns need to figure out who they are. Last year they were kind of experimenting with Isaiah Thomas. Ended up, not working out. And he ended up being traded to the Celtics. But I think the Suns know who they are as a team this year. They know what they want to do, and they know where they want to be. And that's in the Western Conference playoffs, and it's so tough. But I think the Suns have the talent to do it. But how are they going to get it done, Caleb?
It's definitely going to be a questionable season. The preseason, I mean, judging off of what happened, it's hard to tell because it's a bigger roster. But obviously, some teams don't really play competitive like they do in the regular season, so it really can change drastically. Very close. But opening up the season against a Dallas Mavericks team. Obviously, I think Dirk Nowitzki, he's played at Dallas for as long as I remember, since Steve Nash used to play there. But he's a good player, very excited. I mean, the Suns, they're a good team. We just need to see how they're going to do. And going into huge competitors, especially Cleveland, They're going in with high hopes. Boston, I heard they're doing okay. I heard they're going to be like the surprise team in the NBA, but it's really very hard to tell. I mean, they've had a pretty good preseason. It's not gonna tell until we actually see what happens in the regular season, how they're gonna perform, and obviously tipping off the season against Dallas and Portland, their first 2 games, is gonna be a very exciting way to start off the season. I think it's perfect. And not only that, the second home game on Friday, October 30th against Portland, they'll be officially inducting Steve Nash as the latest member in the Ring of Honor. That's obviously a very exciting moment. We've talked about that before in our first episode, I think. And Steve Nash is obviously a Phoenix Suns legend player. Led them to very huge, not only just playoff appearances, but Western Conference final appearances. Very close to that NBA Finals, but obviously didn't get that close. But obviously it's just very exciting to honor the past and present, see here in the Suns. What are your thoughts so far going into the Suns season?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the Steve Nash induction, that's going to be very exciting for the Suns fans. I will be there. But I think the Suns, one thing, it's always big in every sport, is getting off to that hot start. I believe, if my memory is not phasing me here, the Golden State Warriors started off the season 18-2 last year, if I remember correctly. And if you will remind me, who won the NBA championship last year?
Golden State.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things is getting off to that hot start, not digging yourself the hole. So, as the Suns, you want to get up, especially against Portland and Dallas, who will both be fighting for playoff spots this year. Damian Lillard and that new Portland team without DeMarcus Aldridge, or what's his name?
DeMarcus Richards?
No, Aldridge. I'm forgetting his first name. He went to San Antonio. Sorry, his first name's escaping me. Aldridge, though, who went to San Antonio and joined Greg Popovich and company. But Dallas and Portland will both be right around that 8th seed with the Suns. And I think it's 2 games that you want to get off to a hot start, maybe put those teams in the hole to start off, and the Suns getting off. And I think it's really going to be all about the high-pressure offense, running the floor, getting the rebounds, and pushing the outlets with Bledsoe and Brandon Knight.
Now, I'm actually looking forward to that, Bledsoe returning to the Suns. The Suns have had very big injuries costing them at the end of the season, but really now they've had a long off season to let those players heal. I think it's very exciting. They're going in some very big competitors. I'm very excited to see how this is going to work out. But do you think, like, judging off the team they have now, you think they're going in with an older or younger team, depending on these players?
The Suns have always been the youngest, not the youngest, but one of the youngest teams in the NBA. And I think they did a really good job this year of keeping the core young guys, but adding players like Tyson Chandler and Lure. I don't know how to pronounce his name. The two new big men. I think that's really going to help players like Alex Len and Markieff Morris, who has known to be getting a hot head and blowing up on Coach Hornacek and some of the media. And I think, like I said, who will benefit the most from this is Alex Len, a player who we drafted with a number 5 overall pick in the draft. Again, a weak draft when we drafted him, but a player like Tyson Chandler, who's one of the best rim protectors in the NBA, somebody who plays great defense, been Defensive Player of the Year many times. I think that's really going to help Alex Len kind of establish himself as a low-post presence for the Suns.
Yeah, they'll definitely, for sure. I mean, Alex Len, I think he's a very talented player, a talent that he brings that no other Suns player can bring or any other NBA player. Definitely, for sure. But looking at the Pacific Division, I mean, obviously, I don't think the Lakers, I don't think they're going to be good this year.
Kobe's victory lap here, his last season as a Laker.
Yeah, do you think, I haven't read all the news about Kobe, but do you think this will be Bryant's last year in the NBA?
I mean, I can't even imagine how many times he said this, but he did, and I quote, he said this is his last year playing for the NBA, and he's going to retire as a Los Angeles Laker, which is great to see for Kobe. I'm not sure how much of it is so he'll get a lot of the media saying, oh, Kobe's last game. This is Kobe's last first home game, if that makes sense. But I think Kobe's had such a great career, and I think it's about time for him to go out.
Yeah, and he's got a lot to be proud about. He's won a couple NBA championships with the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, there's no other teams I've ever seen as achievements with LA, so obviously it seems most appropriate that he retires with the team he's made a lot of history with the Lakers. So obviously, I mean, he's a good player. He's been more of the how I'd say the kryptonite. I would say my version of it, because he's always been a huge competitor when it comes to the Phoenix Suns. But really, Kobe Bryant will always go down, whether anyone likes it or not, as one of the best players in the NBA, and definitely a future basketball Hall of Famer, which obviously seems far to tell for now, but I definitely see it happening. But now, yeah, looking to other teams other than the Lakers, Sacramento, obviously, everyone knows they're going to be the bad team. We don't even hear that name that much. The Clippers and Golden State, though.
Those are the two teams.
Those are the two teams I think are going to be very competitive to Phoenix. Those are hard teams to get through. Do you think? What do you think the Suns, going in statistically, how they're going to do against those two teams?
Again, Golden State, like we mentioned in the last podcast, Golden State, San Antonio, and the Rockets are probably the three favorites in the West. And I think LA is probably that second-tier team. And I think the Suns have to know who they are as a team. They're not going to be the team that comes out and beats the Golden State Warriors by 50 points. And they're not going to beat San Antonio. And they might be a surprise team like they were 2 years ago, but something they have to know who they are, and they can't go out thinking, oh, we're better than all these teams and get cocky. I think they have to know they're probably one of the last playoff teams in the West, and they have to know that and fight every game like it's their last.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's obviously going to be a very exciting season. I mean, talk about the Pacific Division. I think the Pacific Division, out of all the divisions, I mean, you look at the Northwest, you got Denver, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Portland, Utah, which are all great teams for sure, but I think the Pacific Division, I really think, is going to at least take over the Western Conference Championship this year. It'll be very exciting to tell. Not only that, seeing the Clippers, everyone thinks the Clippers is like the number 2 team in LA. They're really showing that they have so much better performance than the LA Lakers. It's very shocking to tell that we haven't even seen, I don't think ever in their history, even playing basketball in LA. So it's very exciting. And not only that, but looking in the Eastern Conference, we got obviously the other 3 divisions, the Atlantic, the Central, and the Southeast. I mean, obviously, it'll be a very exciting season. Chicago, obviously, is very questionable.
Never know where they're going to be with Derrick Rose.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they've had their controversies with Derrick Rose, whether if he's going to be playing or not. Obviously, Chicago, I think they had a good season. I mean, they came close to eliminating Cleveland, but everyone knew that if they couldn't beat Chicago, beat Cleveland, and Cleveland ended up getting their 3rd win, everyone knew that Cleveland was going to end up sweeping them. But obviously, Chicago is a questionable team. Brooklyn, though, I think will be an okay team. It's really hard to tell. I think it's enough to tell, though, that they are going to be an okay team. But when you look at the Eastern Conference, I mean, compared to the Western Conference, no one really competes when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, I think the team last year, who actually I believe had the number 1 seed, Atlanta Hawks, looked great the entire season. Actually led the regular season series between those two. And then when it came playoff time, King James proved his dominance, sweeping them in the Eastern Conference Finals really easily. But I think Atlanta's a team to look out for. And I think actually one of the teams that you might have to look out for, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but the Philadelphia 76ers.
I haven't heard the Sixers
Call
in a
me
while.
crazy. But with Joel Embiid and who's that other center? I'm missing my names here. Nerlens Noel.
Yeah.
They have 2 dominant centers, and those are very hard to find in the NBA. They've had the good draft picks for past 30 years, it seems like. And I think it's finally time for some of those draft picks to start panning out.
Yeah, that'll be very bold prediction, I think, for sure. I mean, you talk about Atlanta. They actually had the better seed over Cleveland going into Eastern Conference Finals. And I think even when I saw that matchup when it was going to be starting up in the Eastern Conference Finals, everyone knew that Cleveland was going to take out Atlanta, even though Atlanta was the better seed. I mean, obviously, Atlanta, when it comes to the Eastern Conference, it just seems like Cleveland, no matter what the seeds they're facing against, as long as they have LeBron James, seems like they're just going to continue to just take out every Eastern team in the conference. Their biggest competitor, I think, can really take them down if they have this player is Chicago, for sure.
Yeah, and Derrick Rose is is like nowhere. Like no one knows. He broke his orbital bone in his nose and eye in practice by getting elbowed, and he's called
tough break, man.
Yeah, he's made of glass. He's really injury prone. It's so hard. But when he plays, he's one of the best players in the NBA, and it's really fun watching him play. But it's just every time he makes a play towards the hoop, you kind of hold your breath, like, is he okay? Is he going to be okay from that dunk? And it's just really something that's kind of disappointing as a Bulls fan, because it's something you either want to have him, like his first year in the NBA, I believe he won the MVP over LeBron James, and it was just something like, wow, this is the next player. This is the next LeBron James. You never know how good he could be. And then he got injured. He's kind of been off and on. I think that as a Bulls fan, it's disappointing because you want to move on from something like that, but at the same time, there's that little glimmer of hope that he's going to be consistent and healthy for a whole season.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And not only that, I mean, there's a lot of teams in the NBA we could talk about, but obviously, really wanted to talk about this. Some teams no one really knows will be the surprise team. We'll start at the Western Conference. You take a look at some teams. I'll throw some teams out there that we haven't even heard for a while. These names: Memphis, New Orleans, I think Minnesota after Kevin Love left. I don't think Minnesota's been known really much yet. Utah and Sacramento, obviously. Out of all those teams, who do you think will be that surprise team?
New Orleans. No doubt in my mind.
The Pelicans, huh?
The Pelicans. They got in the 8th seed and actually ended up getting swept by the Golden State Warriors in the first round. But, man, that Anthony Davis kid, he is a player. And there was actually a recent poll that 86.3% of GMs in the NBA today, if they had a fantasy draft, they said they would build their franchise. Guess who? Anthony Davis. Not Steph Curry, not James Harden, not LeBron James, but Anthony Davis.
That's pretty bold, yeah.
He's one of the best players, and the coaching staff around there has done a great job building a team around him, and the city's really come around him as their star players, their billboard player, and they're really improving. A team that's improved by 15 wins in the past 2 seasons, and I think they're only going to get better.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then looking at the Eastern Conference, I think there's some teams, don't think it will do good, but who knows. Toronto, Detroit, Milwaukee, Orlando, Washington. We haven't heard these teams survive. Those teams in the Eastern Conference, who's that surprise team?
I think in the Eastern Conference, where the teams are not as strong as the Western Conference, you have to say, I think my guess is Washington, because of John Wall and Bradley Beal and Marcin Gortat and some of those players. They have a little bit more superstars on their team, so I think that's the team you got to kind of look out for. Who got unlucky this? They have Paul Pierce actually still, who hit a buzzer beater in the playoffs last year. But I think it's a team that can kind of sneak up on you. They're not gonna beat, I think, Cleveland in a series, but I think they're a team that can make it maybe Eastern Conference Finals this year.
Yeah, for sure. That's gonna be some bold predictions. Now switching gears in basketball, talking about the MLB postseason, and wow, what a depressing ending to the Chicago Cubs season when it came to getting to the championship series. No offense, but wow. I mean, that was a pretty bad sweep against New York. What are your thoughts about that?
As a fan, you really had high hopes going into this. You beat the best team in baseball pretty handily. Your pitching looked great. You're hitting home runs, scoring 6 runs a game. Look, everything was pointing towards World Series. This is the year. Marty McFly, everything. This is the year. But I think the young players, the young pitching of New York against the young hitting of Chicago, I think it's kind of showed that pitching prevails in the playoffs. Although the Cubs did get away from probably the best pitching staff in the MLB with St. Louis, the hitters really went cold. Chris Bryant, he had a home run in the last game, but it meant nothing. And I think Daniel Murphy for the Mets. Wow, what an NLCS he had. 7 consecutive games actually just broke the MLB record for most consecutive postseason games with a home run.
Yeah.
7 games, that's incredible.
For Chicago, they're going into this National League Championship Series. They had the 3rd best record in baseball. And when you're going in with such high expectations, especially going up against teams like Pittsburgh that they got through, one of those teams, obviously very shocking to see. I thought the Cubs would at least get 1 or 2 wins. Actually, I thought they would at least get 2 wins, not just 1. But obviously, I'm just very shocked to see the really disappointment I've seen with this Cubs team that we thought could be the year they could go to the World Series. Just doesn't seem like that this year.
Yeah, and like we said, the team we thought that could make it to the World Series. But the thing is that I still have a lot of hope for this team that we thought was going to make the World Series maybe 2 weeks ago. If you look back maybe 2 months ago, you'd be like, oh, right, the Cubs are a good team. They're about a year or 2 away from winning the World Series. You never thought 2 months ago that this team was going to win the World Series this year.
No way.
I think as a Cubs fan, that's great to look at. I mean, your young players are doing better than expected. And it's just a lot to look forward to for the next season.
Well, obviously, it looks like Back to the Future was wrong in the history books. And it looks like the Cubs are going to have to wait another year to break that long-awaited Billy the Goat curse.
Oh.
And that is obviously it's been a great year, but obviously the Cubs have had many great years. Like, when it comes to this as a fan at the end of the season, obviously you have a lot to be proud about, but of the season, a lot to be proud about of the season. But it really, all that hard work from the season is to eventually get to the World Series, to get to the, when you're in any sports, to get to that championship spot. It just really feels frustrating for this Chicago team. Obviously, I can really see what they're going from there.
Yeah, it's so hard as a fan. I mean, every year your team sucks, and then you're decent the next year. You're going to be like, God, we could have done this year, but you're never.
It's more that woulda, coulda, shoulda.
I mean,
pretty much.
Besides the Red Sox, I believe of 2 years ago, maybe 3, it's so rare that your team's going to go from worse in the MLB or any sport actually to the best team winning the national championship, the World Series, the Super Bowl, anything like that. I actually think the Red Sox 3 years ago was the first team ever to become worse than the MLB. The next season, win the World Series, and then the season after, be the worst team in the MLB. I think it's the first time to ever happen. Wow,
that's actually very, very shocking for a historical Boston Red Sox team. Obviously, very shocking statistic. Other than the NLCS, New York is set to represent the National League in this 2015 World Series. The ALCS hasn't wrapped up just about yet between Kansas City and Toronto. Kansas City leads the series 3-2. It seems like the Royals will once again go back to the World Series, which hasn't been done before since San Fran. Other than that, it just hasn't been done for a while. But actually, I mean, this seems like a shocking prediction. I think Toronto could still pull this out and get to the World Series.
Yeah, anything can happen in the playoffs, but I think one thing I've watched, there's been 5 games. I've watched 3 of those games, and I think something from watching that, Kansas City looks like a team that's been there before. They look like they've learned their lesson last year from a series that they could have won Game 7 at home in the World Series last year against San Francisco. They know what they want, and nothing's going to stop them from winning the World Series this year. I said my prediction was Cubs-Blue Jays. Both are probably going to be wrong, but I think out of all the teams left, if the Blue Jays advance or the Mets advance, I think the winner of this series of the Blue Jays Royals is going to win the World Series.
It'll definitely be very exciting. Obviously, after seeing that dominant effort by New York, I think we are. I obviously think the Mets. I'm calling out World Series champions.
All
New
right,
York.
We'll see.
You actually, in the past few episodes, you predicted the Cubs would get to the World Series. Obviously, things very shocking turn of events in baseball that happens. But after seeing that dominant effort, I don't think it's a shock to see this prediction that the Mets, I think, will become the 2015 World Series champions. Just calling out. So other than that, but it looks like we're almost out of time. Are you gonna get to talk about the hockey? So we'll get to that soon.
Yeah, we're gonna take a break here on the SportsBuzz podcast on Arizona Sports Box. We'll be back shortly. welcome back to the SportsBuzz podcast here on Arizona Sports Box. I'm Wills, joined by Caleb, and we're going to jump into some Coyotes hockey here as we've talked about them for past 2-3 weeks now, and how we originally thought the season was not going to be great when it originally started. Coyotes got off to a hot start and coming back to earth a little bit as the 8th seed in the current Western Conference playoffs. So, Caleb, tell us a little bit about the Coyotes.
Coyotes are currently sitting at the 8th spot in the NHL Western Conference at a 3-2 record. They're currently the only team in the NHL in the Western Conference to hold that 3-2 record. But it's obviously been a very impressive start for this Arizona Coyotes team going up against teams against their upcoming schedule. They just lost against the New York Rangers, but they do have a game coming up tomorrow night on Saturday against Ottawa, and big matchups Toronto, Boston, Vancouver, and Colorado. Those are all big matchups to see for the Coyotes team. Really been a very impressive start for the Coyotes. Definitely had some tough losses, especially some teams. I think it was a tough loss against Boston that they had. But obviously, it's still hard to tell. It really will jump around every often then. But really been a great season so far for this Coyotes, and they're surviving. So I'm very impressed. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like we said, the Coyotes, not a lot of expectations for the season, and I still don't have a lot. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but anytime you see a team fighting like the Coyotes are, like the Suns I mentioned 2 years ago, no one expected anything. It's great to see as a fan. I know and it shows a lot of hope for the future.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely big. One thing that's really been a little bit pretty much news to me is seeing how these standings change very drastically. The teams I thought would do really good, LA and Anaheim, the two California teams, are actually been a pretty bit of a disappointing performance. Currently, the bottom three in the Western Conference, which is never good to sit at, and obviously just not a really good start for both of these teams. So you look at the Western Conference, Dallas actually at this point sits as the number 1 spot, 6-1, along with Nashville, that's 5-1. So obviously a very big, shocking tournament events that's going on. But looking at the Pacific Division, where the Coyotes division is at, San Jose is 4-2, Vancouver 3-1, Arizona is sitting at that number 3 spot at 3-3 when it comes to their division record. But obviously, San Jose, it's funny, you see them always in that top 3 spot as the number 1 spot. They are actually a really good hockey team, but they always have this curse every year. Yep. They play so good in the regular season, and then you just see them play terrible, very terribly in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Hopefully we don't see that in this season, but hopefully. But San Jose is doing good so far. Vancouver, obviously we haven't seen them do well in the Western Conference. I think it's been since that Stanley Cup final when they lost to Boston. They threw that huge riot.
Yep.
Obviously, I think everyone knows that story. But Vancouver obviously doing good like they always are again, which is good for them. Edmonton, they did get that number 1 pick in the NHL draft, and looking at the Pacific Division, they're currently sitting at the number 4 spot, which is very questionable. But if you look at the conference standings, so I'll try to pull it up here, Edmonton is actually number 10, which is very shocking. Their number 1 spot pick, many people have said he's going to be the next Wayne Gretzky, like I've always pointed this out. Very shocking to see for Edmonton. Kind of I guess I would say it more of a slow start for this 3-4 record team. But obviously it's very hard to tell. Who do you think of all these teams? I mean, I know you're not that big of a hockey fan, but who do you think is currently the best compares to the Arizona Coyotes right now?
I mean, it's hard to say with such an early season. I mean, the Blackhawks are always good. The Red Wings are always great. But I think one of the things the Coyotes have to battle is themselves, knowing that everyone's picking them to get last, and not last, but not make the playoffs, be one of the worst teams in the NHL again. I think they have to battle themselves and getting the mindset out that each and every night that they have a chance to win the game, that they're not going to lose every single game. And I think the Coyotes really have to think that. And if they do, I think they're going to have a pretty decent season.
No, it'll be very, very decent season. It'll be very, very exciting. They have some big matchups, more of Eastern teams they're facing right now. So that'll be very exciting. But obviously, it's just very hard to tell at this point, just like always when you're going the first month of the season. It is coming near Halloween, so we're already 1 month, completely almost 1 month into the season. It's already been very tilting when it comes to this Pacific Division to the Arizona Coyotes. That'll be very exciting. But we're about, other than that, the Coyotes. Also, we got ASU basketball, which will be starting up, so we're very excited to bring them into the talk in the next few weeks.
The Bobby Hurley era.
Bobby Hurley. I'm so excited. I mean, Herb Sandick, I think he's a great coach. He's really done a lot of great things at ASU. I'm very, very excited for Bobby Hurley to come into ASU basketball. I know it's very early to predict so far, but what do you think Bobby Hurley is going to bring to this ASU basketball team from historic legends like James Harden, big players like that? What do you think?
I think it's something that's going to help a lot is that he was a coach at Duke, one of the best programs, obviously defending national champions. I think it's going to help that he came from a great program, so players are actually going to want to play for Arizona State.
Yeah, of course. Like I know Bobby Hurley, he's had a long history with Duke. Obviously, when everyone thinks of college basketball, what do they think of? They're going to think of Duke. But
Duke, Kentucky, Kansas.
Duke is a good basketball team, but Arizona State, they have the potential to have a both great football and basketball team, which no college has never been done before. Hopefully, we'll see that potential.
Sadly, only the U of A. That's last year, sadly.
Pretty much. Yeah, I mean, obviously, U of A, they have a good basketball team, but who knows? I mean, ASU's pulled off a bunch of huge shockers against U of A. Yeah. Bobby Hurley in the driver's seat of this ASU basketball team. Very excited to see what he will do. It'll be very exciting. Not only that, Bobby Hurley, if I'm correct, he used to be on the Duke basketball team with Grant Hill and, of course, the most hated player in all of sports, Christian Laettner, was such a dirty player back then. But obviously, yeah, very exciting to see the historical Duke basketball. And what do you think of Duke's career, especially players like Grant Hill and, yes, Christian Laettner? But what do you think of Bobby's history that he'll bring to ASU?
Yeah, like I said, he knows what playing for the best program feels like. And I think he can bring that mantra to Arizona State, get the best players, and be consistent like U of A has and Utah has been recently.
That'd be very exciting. Also, I don't know if you've read the history. I watched a little bit of 30 for 30, but what do you think of the history he's had with Christian Laettner, especially the #1 hated player in all of sports?
I think he knows what it's like. So, there's college students that are always going to be kind of iffy with their motto, thinking they're the best. And I think that's going to help him in the future with some of the college students.
It'll be very, very exciting. All right, well, that is going to wrap it up for another week. Once again, like we always do, is a final summary. What are your thoughts going into what we'll see next week, especially the Cardinals, the Sun Devils, Coyotes, the Suns, and, of course, the MLB postseason, just to summarize it all up going into next week.
Yeah, so Arizona State is going to be on a bye this weekend.
Which is nice, yeah.
No game. Next game is Thursday against Oregon. Then Cardinals will be playing Monday Night Football against the Ravens, which is going to be a huge game. It's going to be very, very exciting, and I think the Cardinals should pull that off. And we're going to see the Suns tip off, which is going to be very exciting on Wednesday. So a very exciting week of sports next week for Arizona with Monday Night Football, opening tip-off for the NBA, and ASU versus Oregon on ESPN.
That'll be very exciting against Oregon, especially wearing the military uniforms to honor the late Pat Tillman. That'll be very exciting. The Suns will eventually be getting ready to tip off this basketball for real season, which I'm very excited. The Coyotes looking to step up their games. It's obviously, other than football, it's been a depressing week, but obviously it's never too late to bounce back from this tough season, especially when you're the Cardinals or the Coyotes. So it will be very exciting. Well, that is going to do it for the SportsBuzz podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll have more of the podcast like we do every Friday, so we'll hope you'll join us soon. And once again, that is going to do it. We'll see you next Friday. You've been listening to the SportsBuzz podcast on Arizona Sports Box.